happened, and it's them, but also the next generation of kids are seemingly seeing all of this. And I think it's important that these guys are doing what they're doing. But the difference between this generation and our generation, they have a platform to speak, and a generation before, like Luther we spoke to before, these guys now have a platform and they know how to use it. They can make change. Marcus is a great example of that. Trent is someone who's coming up behind trying to do that as well, and Raheem. These guys are at the forefront of that. But the problem is, it's not going to be just them guys, the players who are going to be able to make change. It needs to be a movement. It can't just be campaigns. We've seen far too often that different charities, different organisations doing some flyby campaigns. Yes, their intentions are great, but they're not sustained. They don't make change over a long period of time, and because the foundations of that aren't education, I believe education has to be the real foundations of that. They have to be in the curriculum, the government have to get behind it, and these players need to, yes, be at the forefront of it, but side by side next to them needs to be the the broadcasters, the sport broadcasters, the FA, the Premier League, all of the clubs all together, sitting together with the same message, pushing out the same message. So these next generation of children, the young people, aren't confused with each organisation having their own message here and their own message there. It needs to be from one centre point, all singing from the same hymn sheet.
Because I bet you, if you sat in on meetings of big companies or sports governing bodies, media companies, whoever, they would all go, well, we're doing our bit. You know, we've got a great track record of opposing racism. Well, guess what? None of it's been good enough because people are still racist and there is still racism. So we have to start doing something that for the last 20 or 30 years we haven't done. I don't know what that is. I'm hoping that you do.
Yeah, and I believe it's all of them coming together. Like you say, every organisation will sit there and they'll be ticking boxes and saying, we've done our bit here, we've done our bit there. But doing it on your own isn't good enough. It has to be a centralised unit that they're all working from, and all of their messages are very clear. There's no grey areas, and we're all saying the same thing. Because a young kid's going to sit there, he's getting a message over there from that broadcaster, a broadcaster there, a Premier League team there, a player there. It's all different. That adds to the confusion. And people that say, listen, there's been so many people that say, oh, it's better now than it was before. Oh, it's not as bad as it used to be. That's not good enough. I mean, if you look at it with individuals, you look at people, oh, is it better now than it was before? Well, are you getting stopped by police on a daily basis? Are you not being allowed into certain shops on a daily basis? Are you crossing the road because you're in fear of somebody else feeling a little bit in fear of their own safety because of the colour of your skin? All of them things are because of the colour of someone's skin. It leads me down the road to ask you the question, would you swap places with someone who's black? In today's society, would you?
And my honest answer would be no, because I know that my life would be harder. I know that if I was in America, I'd be more likely to lose my life. I know that if I was over here walking down the street, I would be subject to racist abuse. Of course not, because there are still racists.
So when people say, oh, it's much better, oh, it's not as bad as it was before, there's your answer. It isn't. There might not be as glaring. It's sometimes more subconscious to racism, but it's still racism. People are feeling marginalised. And people are saying, oh, all lives matter. I understand that, but Black Lives Matter here and now because they feel marginalised. We feel like we're marginalised. We feel that opportunities aren't the same as standing next to a white person. So there is a problem that needs to be addressed, and I'm just so happy that these young players now have got the strength, they feel they've got the support, they've got the momentum at the moment, but this has to continue.
And they also feel that they have the responsibility. I mean, I remember I think the first time that we saw a young black footballer overtly say, you're racists, was when Raheem came out and he had the headlines showing how different media portray black and white footballers, and that was a big moment, and it feels like since then others have taken that mantle on, and a unit is forming.
Yeah, I think that is. I think like I said to you, I think there's going to be leaders within this, and I think Raheem's one of them. But I think it's very, very. It has to be clear, that message, and I think that these players can't feel pressured into coming out and speaking. They need to be fully educated, and then they have to have that passion and that desire to come out, because the power of social media today means, like we've seen, is that you can create movements and you can create change. Marcus Rashford is a fine example of that for these players going forward, that yes, if you push and you've got a message and you can execute it properly, you can create change at a government level. And I think the education, I go back to that, education in the school curriculum for these young people has to be a must, because listen, again, if you're a young kid, he goes home, one of his parents, or if not both, or his uncle or a friend of the family is very ignorant and they're racist. That kid isn't equipped with the education to be able to go back to the parent and say, listen, oh, that's not right. It's what about this? Have you seen it from this? And then try and re-educate their own family. But if you spoke to that kid about his team he's supporting, and that ignorance was coming from a place of your team's rubbish or the computer game you're on's not right, he would definitely back himself to be able to have an argument, a discussion, a debate with that family member to say, no, actually, this is how it is. It needs to be the same from the perspective of discrimination and racism.
And do you sense that we're getting to that point? Because I think as a white person, the big revelation for me is I've always thought, well, I'm not at all racist, right? And then I suddenly see the conversation going on now, and I realise, like, I am not actively anti-racist. I know I'm not racist, but I just allow the world to carry on. And I think now, white people are saying, right, we need to be part of the solution because we are the problem.
That is a big, big difference. I think a lot of people, when racism spoke about, people think, oh, black people have to be the people that march. I went to the march. It was a very mixed demographic.
Lots of white people, white children.
Yes, there was. And that was one of the most refreshing things to see, that it's a problem not just for black people. There are white people and people of different colours that think, actually, this is wrong, and I'm going to stand side by side with my fellow black people and say this isn't right, and we're going to try and make a movement for change. And that's where football is as well. It's not just up to the responsibility of the Raheems, Marcus and the Trent Alexander-Arnolds. You also need players, prominent players. Jordan Henderson has taken a big role in that. He's put himself out there. Others have to follow that and stand side by side with their fellow pros to make sure that there's change, not just for the guys at the top, but everyone else down the chain.
Yeah. And I'm sorry for all the times that I wasn't actively anti